Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Zolo. We're now officially a quarter of the way through the NFL season. It is week 5. The COVID list seems to be growing and growing ever so greatly throughout each day. The Tennessee Titans are an absolute mess of an organization right now. There's
breaking all the rules, man.
Breaking all the rules. There's supposed talks of them potentially, if this continues, having to forfeit games. So I'll be interested to see how that continues on. Joining me, as always, Joshua Hudson and Ryan Weiss. And for the first time on the show, Eric Ludwig, a writer with the Fantasy Footballers. Eric, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you coming on. You can follow him at FF_. Is that Gouge?
You can say it either way. It's normally pronounced gooch, but it's like a Navy term, meaning like inside information. But like nobody outside the Navy has any idea what that means. They say like gouge your eyes out. Sounds aggressive.
I'm not gonna lie, Googe is way better, so I'm gonna go with Googe. Like, that sounds way cooler. I don't know why, it just sounds way cooler. All right, before we get into everything, everybody, it's the normal lineup: 3 up, 3 down, upside, downsides from all 4 of us here. Ryan's stream of the week, my kicker of the week, which is what everyone tunes in for, and then my blurred lines pick of the week as well. But starting off, we have some incredible news to start off here. Bill O'Brien is finally out of the NFL.
Woo!
It is about time. Like, if Bill O'Brien and Adam Gase get fired, there's going to be a lot less to talk about on this show, which kind of sucks. Bill O'Brien was good for content, which is what kind of sucks. But, I mean, if you're a Texans fan, you couldn't be happier that he is relieved of his not only head coaching duties, but also general manager duties. A reminder, his team is 0-4, his former team is 0-4. They don't have a first or second round pick in this upcoming draft. Both of them belong to the Miami Dolphins, who, again, not world beaters, but they seem to be putting together a somewhat decent team to be building for the future. I'm just going to say somewhat decent.
My favorite tweet about this was when Scott Fish said that they should have made sure Bill O'Brien paid his league fees before he was allowed to drop out.
That's a very on-brand tweet for Scott Fish. I love it.
Dwayne Haskins has officially been benched in Washington. Kyle Allen will start for the football team this week, and Alex Smith is named as his backup. Haskins goes from first string to third string.
Talk about a demotion. Good God.
Yeah, that's tough, right? You're demoted behind a guy who had a Joe Theismann injury, who was never supposed to play football ever again. So I think that says something right there. That does kind of raise a question for Terry McLaurin. Is we knew the rapport he had with Dwayne Haskins going back to Ohio State. So how does that transition to Kyle Allen or Alex Smith? It'll be interesting to see that come out. And more COVID outbreaks as well. We already talked about the Titans. 2 more of their players tested positive, I believe.
Including Corey Davis.
Yep.
Come on, man.
And keep in mind, they already had 2 wide receivers on that list.
Yep. Adam Humphries being one of them, too.
Yep.
So they're without. Is A.J. Brown back from injury?
Supposed to be.
Okay. So just for shits and giggles here, they could be without their top 3 receivers, and their number 1 guy would be Khalif Raymond.
Yep.
Who in Madden 20 was a
burner.
67 overall. Let's just
But he's
throwing
fast.
that out there. He is. He has a 94 speed rating, and he has like a 70 catch rating. The bigger one, though, Stephon Gilmore, the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year, has tested positive for coronavirus. Josh put in the notes, don't let Patrick Mahomes test positive.
Well, I mean, we all saw that picture that was circulating, right? With Gilmore and Mahomes post-game. Like, just saying. Never know.
You never know. And before we dive into everything here, Steely McBeam over on Facebook. Steely, thank you for always joining. He has a trade offer in. He has Michael Thomas, Kenny Golladay, G.J. Chark, and Terry McLaurin. He's saying the team that is offering the trade is with the trade with him has DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper, and Drew Brees. Both of you have absolutely loaded wide receiver rooms. Let's just start off by saying that. They are offering Steely, Amari Cooper, and Tyler Lockett for Michael Thomas. It is a half-point PPR, a 10-team keeper league. Eric, I'll start with you because this is actually really interesting here. Would you rather have two guys that could do better than Michael Thomas each week, or Michael Thomas that could do better than both of these guys in 1 week? Who are you taking? Which side of the argument are you taking here?
Man, this is weird because I love Michael Thomas, but this is one of those years where I kind of built my teams around having some flexibility in case, I don't know, games get canceled, moved, postponed. So I kind of like the idea of having two guys, especially when you're talking about Cooper and Lockett. I mean, it's not like you're significantly downgrading for Michael Thomas. And Thomas, like, we don't really know what he's going to be like when he comes back. So I actually kind of like the idea of getting the 2-for-1 here.
Josh?
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, look, you guys gave me a hard time when I took Amari Cooper in our some bullshit live draft, right? He right now is leading the league in targets and receiving yards. And not only that, he's been consistent.
Yep.
Okay. I will take the Cooper side of this deal all day and twice on Sundays.
Ryan?
So he brings up a very interesting point that this would give his opponent the ability to start Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, and Devontae Adams every single week. And there is something to
names don't matter. Production does.
I mean,
throwing that out there.
Yeah,
just throwing that out there.
but just the high ankle sprain does scare me off of Michael Thomas because guys don't always come back out and play like that. And I'll take the depth in this COVID year too. But the fact that it's a keeper league makes me scared to give Michael Thomas away.
Yeah, but how many players are being kept year to year? Does it, like, if one player was kept 1 year, are they back in the pool the next year? Like, there's still a lot of variables that go into that.
Just to say production over name recognition, Robbie Anderson is currently the wide receiver 11. Just throwing that out there. No one in their right mind thought Robbie Anderson would be wide receiver 11 4 weeks through the season. But
at a certain point, you have to start buying into the production.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this isn't just after 1 week. This is now 4 weeks, and Robbie Anderson's still doing it.
And for the record, Lockett and Amari Cooper are both top 5 wide receivers.
Yeah, and if you're saying it's the last year you can keep Michael Thomas, make that trade as fast as possible. Yeah.
That's not even a question. I hate Amari Cooper, and I hate how well he is doing, but CeeDee Lamb is still trending towards being the number 1 wide receiver in Dallas, which is
kind of ways to go. Just saying.
It's all that matters. It's all that matters. But yeah, I think we're all on the side of Cooper and Lockett for Thomas. Yeah, make the trade. Easily make that trade, most definitely. All right, getting into now our 3 up, 3 downs. I'm just going to pick a few out of the crowd after I run through these. All right, so 3 ups. Eric, Teddy Two Gloves, coming off 2 straight wins with the Panthers. Kareem Hunt and Chase Edmonds. Ryan, Robert Tonyan, who absolutely bent over Josh in our Dynasty League. Guess who started him?
Boom.
This guy. Screw you, Josh.
Hey, I love Big Chubb. Don't rub salt on the wound, man.
Listen. I was, I think I was editing a video or something, and Maggie was over on the couch, our graphic designer, and I heard Robert Tonyan touchdown. I get up, do a guitar solo, and I'm like, F you, Josh. I say it out loud. He scores again. I do the same thing, and Maggie starts dying laughing. Robert Tonyan, you god. Okay, Robert Tonyan, DJ Chark, and Terry McLaurin. Josh, Joe Mixon on your bench. Justin Herbert and Devontae Parker. Myself, Damian Harris, CeeDee Lamb, and Tim Patrick. The Damian Harris pick was more so excitement for the future. I know we only had like 12 points in fantasy unless you get bonus for going over 100.
He had 100 yards.
Yeah, no, unless you get bonus for going over 100. But yeah, I feel like the guy to focus in on here is Joe Mixon because obviously he was being drafted.
That was a performance.
It was a performance, but he was being drafted as a top 10 guy.
Some cases, some people were projecting like a top 5 finish for him, and he has started very slow out of the gate.
And that's the question I want to bring up is, are we buying into this Joe Mixon performance, or are we not because it was against the Jacksonville Jaguars? And Josh, we'll start with you since you had him on your list.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I mean, this is the Jaguars. This is the same team that Derrick Henry has shredded every single year outside of, what was it, week 2, I think?
Week 2, yeah, where he was pedestrian.
Yeah, I love the passing game usage. I mean, 6 targets, 6 receptions, 30 yards, and a touchdown. If that continues, absolutely I will buy in because I don't see Mixon putting together a ton of 100-yard games this year. But with the presence of Gio Bernard, I don't know that we're going to consistently see 4 to 6 targets a game for Mixon. And I think that's really what we need to see from him for him to hit that RB12 benchmark.
Eric, are you buying into the Mixon hype after 4 weeks or no?
I'm a little bit conflicted because I think Mixon is better than what he had done, but I think that Jacksonville game, that was an outlier. And the problem this week is he's going against Baltimore now. So Baltimore is absolutely stymied rushing attacks for the most part. The one thing that Baltimore is a little bit weak on, this is one of my downside plays for the week, but is they actually do allow a good amount of receptions to the running backs. So I wonder, Burrow's going to throw a ton again. So Mixon should get some more receptions. So that kind of gives him a nice floor. But I'm not, projecting him to be, I don't even know if top 10 for the rest of the year. I don't think I can go there, but there's something there. I think he's got a ton of talent, and that team is only going to get better. Still, I think that Jacksonville thing was more of an outlier than a new normal.
Yeah, and Ryan, I'll give it to you just quickly. When they feed Joe Mixon, they win football games. It's that simple. So I mean, I'm not going to say win football games with the freaking Bengals, but they're put in a better position to win. And we saw they fed Joe Mixon. They got Joe Burrow his first win.
Yeah, it's the chicken and egg argument too, though. They were already going to win the game, and they kept feeding him. So,
sure.
But Eric said it best. This is not the new normal. I'm not necessarily selling Mixon. His normal is probably somewhere in between this. He's on pace right now, and he had 6 targets this past week. He's hitting at about 4 targets a game here and there with this 6 targets. So he's on pace for about 60 targets this year, which would be great for him. He's never had more than, I think, 55 in his second year. So it's looking like his best target year if they can keep this up. The yards per carry is concerning. This is his first game over 4. And again, it's Jacksonville who gives up the number 4 score to running backs after this game. So it's not the new normal. He's likely a back end RB1, RB2 moving forward, but he's going to give you games like this. And it's better to get games like this than to not get games like this, to make it just as simple as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. And quickly before we move on to the downs, I want to bring up Tim Patrick quick because his why can't I think of the word? His matchup this week got way more enticing with Stephon Gilmore being out of the lineup. Props to Ryan for bringing up his name on last week's show when it came to Brett Rippon starting. But if you're looking for a cheap DFS play, and I don't know how much his salary is on DraftKings or on FanDuel, but he will be matched up most likely against J.C. Jackson or Jonathan Jones, who are known for giving up a few big plays. Tim Patrick could see, a cheap touchdown or 2 this week just because Denver is probably going to have to throw the football to stay in that game.
And they just announced KJ Himmler's out.
Oh, yeah, I would line up Tim Patrick at that point because you're looking at Tim Patrick, Deshaun Hamilton, and Noah Fant might be out as well, right?
I haven't heard any news on him at all yet. When he initially went down, they said it was probably going to be some time, but then they haven't updated that at all.
Yeah. All right, going to the downs. Eric. You had Hayden Hurst, no touchdown for him last week. Mike Gesicki and Anthony Miller. Ryan, Josh Jacobs. I felt that one. Zach Ertz, Tyler Lockett. Josh, Kenyon Drake, who just has forgotten how to play football. DJ Moore. You said the sad thing is he's still on pace for over 1,100 yards, and I think DJ Moore is allergic to the end zone. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. He doesn't want to step in the end zone. I like his matchup this week, but he's allergic to the end zone. And then Michael Gallup as well, who we'll get to in a second. Myself, I had Julian Edelman. Those drops, man. That was tough.
He didn't look right.
No, he didn't look. He didn't look like his head was in that game at all. He seemed way out of it. Robert Woods, who was an absolute disappointment against the Giants, and my favorite one personally, because I absolutely rubbed it in Josh's face last week and he didn't listen. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, wide receiver 56 on Josh's upside pick last week.
I'm just saying, he had 8 targets. That's what I was betting on.
Josh, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. He needs to catch those targets in order for it to count.
I just needed one of those 4 catches to be like a 40-yard bomb. That's it. That's all I needed.
Look.
Robert Tonyan.
Valdez-Scantling is nothing in that offense. Plain and simple. Drop him. If he goes off one week and you still have him on your roster, trade him immediately because he will not do it again the rest of the season. But the guy I want to talk about, because this is ridiculous. 3 out of the 4 weeks so far, he's played in the highest flying offense in the NFL, mostly out of need because Dallas has played from behind in all of their games. What the F is up with Michael Gallup? Like, where has he been? We came into this season saying that Gallup is a dark horse for being a high-end wide receiver too, and he was being incredibly undervalued in redraft leagues, going as like I believe he was in the mid wide receiver 30s, come closer to the start of the year. Ryan, I'll start with you. I mean, Gallup has had one performance so far this year that is really start-worthy, and it was in week 3.
It seems like Gallup is just. I think Gallup's just taken over the Amari Cooper role where he's going to be the boomer bust guy because he's on pace for 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns in this crazy offense. Now they're on pace to throw it, I think, 800 times. So I don't necessarily see that continuing, but he's on pace for 1,104 touchdowns, which if at the beginning of the year, you wouldn't have been happy with those touchdowns, but you would have been happy with that yardage if I told you that's what you were getting. But unfortunately, it's been 1 good game and 3 duds. He's the new Amari Cooper. So people were still taking Amari Cooper in the 3rd, 4th round as a wide receiver 1, back end, front end wide receiver 2. I don't think you can give up on Gallup. I think there's going to be better weeks. CeeDee Lamb is clearly the better fit for the slot. So Cooper and Gallup are playing on the outside. There's only room for one of them right now, and Cooper only has 1 touchdown as well. So there's going to be weeks where it slides Cooper's way. There's going to be fewer weeks where it slides Gallup's way. Lamb is going to be your safest pick in this. I don't see Cooper keeping his consistency. I see Lamb playing out of that slot role, staying consistent all year long.
So looking at, you talk about what he's on pace for. Dak Prescott currently is on pace for some ungodly amount of passing yards. Like, he's on pace to
6,800 passing yards.
Like, that's absurd, right? That's absolutely absurd. And the funny part is he'd have 6,800 passing yards.
36 touchdowns.
36 touchdowns. Like, that's ridiculous. That's his pace right now. So you sit there and say, if Dallas is going to continue to play from behind, because their defense is not going to look like they're getting any better at all. Their secondary keeps getting depleted. Their linebackers are injury prone. Their defensive line looks terrible outside of Aldon Smith.
It sounds like Van Der Esch is practicing this week and should be coming back within the next week or so.
Oh, cool. Who's the other white linebacker that played for Dallas for the last 10 years and got hurt every time he was
Sean
in the game?
Lee.
I think his name was Sean Lee, and he never saw the field as a Dallas Cowboy.
Why do you got to preface that he's a white guy? Come on, man. Jeez.
Sean Lee, white linebacker, played for the Cowboys who is injury prone. Leighton Van Der Esch, white linebacker that plays for the Cowboys who is injury prone. Has nothing to do with the color of his skin. They're just both white, and that adds up, and that makes part of my point. That's all it is. Like, what does it matter? Like that.
Exactly.
Tom Brady likes short white slot receivers. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what the case is. But Eric, I'll go to you. Ryan talked about it. CeeDee Lamb is probably the safest pick in this offense at receiver right now. If you're sitting there and, for me personally, I have Gallup and Lamb on a couple of teams. I'm sure there may be a couple people out there, definitely Cowboys fans, that probably have that same conundrum. I mean, are you starting Lamb over Gallup? I mean, even this week, right? You look at the matchup, it's the Giants. Gallup should eat against this team. But when you look at it, would you rather start CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup this week?
I'd probably still go with Lamb. Well, you know what? Honestly, it depends on the matchup. It depends what's going on with my team. If I just need somebody to get some points, I'm probably going with Lamb. If I need somebody to just just crush it. Give me well over 100 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and Gallup is probably the guy. But the thing with Lamb too is it's not like this is a complete outlier. You had Cole Beasley who was there and did pretty well with Dak, and after that, even Cobb did pretty well with Dak. So this is not something that's unusual at all. So I'd probably go Lamb most of the time. It's just those maybe one-off type things where I just need like a home run, and maybe I'd go Gallup.
And that's that coin flip that, Ryan, you were talking about, is him and Amari Cooper have just kind of switched those roles of we knew Cooper last year as 50 points or 5 points, and there was no in between. And that's what we've seen from Gallup so far this year. He had, I believe, 4.5 points last week, and he had 40 the week before. Like, he absolutely popped off. So it's going to be an interesting conundrum there in that wide receiver room in Dallas. Go ahead, Josh.
I'm going to add this really quick because we have a question in the chat. But here's the interesting thing to me. Gallup right now is 5th on the team in targets and 1st in the number of routes run. So, like, they're putting him in a position to make plays. They're just not throwing him the football.
So maybe
I just feel like I just feel like there's going to be a time when he's going to pop. I don't know if it's going to be consistency. Maybe there's just, he's adjusting to a different role. I don't know, learning this offense, whatever it is, and he's just not getting, some signals are getting crossed up, but he's being put in a position, hey, I need to get open. And maybe that's just not the case. He's not getting open. Cooper and Lamb are.
I was going to say, maybe we're right, and he's getting the number 1 treatment, and he's being taken out of the game. I just looked to see if I was right about this, and I am. He has 0 targets in the red zone. I haven't done enough research on Dallas to know if they're taking him out and running like 12 personnel down there, but he has 0 targets in the red zone.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting stat, both of those, because it does scream that he's getting the opportunity but not taking advantage of it, or Prescott's not looking his way. And quickly before we continue to the upsides, Bash Brother over on Periscope, is Austin Eckler safe to drop in redraft leagues? And if so, who would you pick up as a bench prospect? He adds in 3 names: Chase Edmonds, J.K. Dobbins, or Cam Akers. Let's just start with the first question, and let's just go with one-word answers. Is it safe to drop Austin Eckler in redraft leagues? Josh?
No.
Eric?
No.
Ryan?
Nope.
Okay, that's an easy one. Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
Just like our friend Tommy said in the chat, put him on IR.
Yeah.
Put him on IR. Save him. It's 4 to 6 weeks, presumably. If they come out and announce that he's going to be done for the year, then yes, then he's safe to drop. Absolutely. Clearly, right? It's the same thing we all did with Saquon Barkley. When the news came out, we dropped him.
You can't lose games in the NFL and still expect to win. Trent Dilfer.
There you go.
Exactly.
Best quote ever. But I guess out of, if he's looking because he needs to fill in a running back spot, Chase Edmonds, J.K. Dobbins, or Cam Akers, I think we would all say at the same time to fill in for this week 1, 2, 3, Chase Edmonds.
Chase Edmonds, yeah.
That's, against the Jets. So, and Josh, we'll get to him in a little bit. Another one from our buddy Lee. Lee, we appreciate you, man. He's saying Mostert against Miami. I don't know if he's actually playing in the game, but let's just, for shits and giggles, say that he's playing. Or Miles Sanders against Pittsburgh, or James Conner against Philly. He needs 2 to start in a standard league. Eric, I'll go to you first, and I'll put that up on there just so everyone can see.
It makes it easy that it's 2. Sanders and Conner, they're the healthy. Yeah, Conner's coming off an extra bye week there, so he should be good to go. So I'm definitely going there. I'm not risking it with Mostert. We don't really know where he's if he plays. We don't really know where he's at, and it's a committee even if he does come back.
Josh?
Yeah, I would begrudgingly say Sanders and Connor. I'm not high on Sanders this week, and I think if Connor is really going to do anything against Philly, it's going to be in the passing game. They're averaging, I think they're allowing like 3.5 yards a carry to running backs this year. Philly's always had a good run defense, but if Mostert gets the green light, that is a smash matchup for me. I don't care about McKinnon's presence or even Jeff Wilson. Like, if Mostert plays, they're going to feed him the football, and I want all Mostert in my lineup if that's the case. So in that case, I would put Mostert in over Sanders.
Ryan?
I'm with Eric. I avoid guys with the questionable tag. It's something I started doing about 2 years ago, and I feel like it's worked out very well for me because you never know when they're going to re-aggravate, and if they get ahead in this game, they're going to keep feeding Jeff Wilson and Jerick McKinnon, so I would definitely go Sanders and Connor.
Fine, I'll be the odd guy out. Whatever.
No, because there's a fourth person here.
Ooh, do we have a surprise guest?
Me. Because I see both sides of it, right? I hate playing players coming back after a long injury, especially when they're still sitting there as questionable, and I'm not like 100% positive that they're good to go and healthy. But Miles Sanders has an awful matchup. Like he may not even see 20 yards rushing. Like,
Especially the way that our line is so depleted.
If Mostert plays, Mostert may only see 3 carries and get 50 yards and a touchdown. So at that point, I think he scores more than Miles Sanders, if not scores the same. If Mostert's healthy, it's Mostert and Connor. And then obviously by default, if Mostert's not healthy, it's Miles Sanders and James Conner. But, oh, God.
Luckily, they all play, I believe, at the same time and day.
They do.
So you can wait that out.
Yeah. Another one over on YouTube from Precise 2K. Should he trade Terry McLaurin for Julio Jones? That.
Absolutely not. I do not trust Julio Jones. Hamstring injuries to 30-plus-year-old wide receivers, I don't want anything to do with that.
Eric, Ryan?
Yeah, I have Jones in one dynasty league, and I'm trying to figure out what I can do with him. I can't, you don't want to sell him for peanuts, because at some point he probably will come back and do some good things. But it's almost like you're stuck with him. But I'm going with McLaurin. There's no way I'm getting Jones.
Ryan?
Yeah, same boat. I love Terry McLaurin to begin with. Definitely not trading for an injured Julio Jones, a guy who has wide receiver 1 potential and was just targeted 14 times last week.
I think you could offer Ryan 3 first-round picks for McLaurin, and he still wouldn't part with them.
It would be, I would think longer than someone shouldn't have to.
I mean, look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with McLaurin with a different quarterback. But I don't think you do that. McLaurin's been an absolute monster so far this season, and that's just something that you don't want to do right now. And then another one from our friend FF Angie CMS. Do we trust Chase Edmonds this week? And I think we quickly
we're going to touch on that, Angie. So if you want to stick around, I promise you we'll get to it.
Yeah. Angie's ruining the next
short
segment.
answer, yes.
Come on, Angie. All right, so the upsides now. Eric, Linda last week was 1-3, so not awful, I guess, right? 1 win in there. Eric, you have Derek Carr, Derek Henry, Curtis Samuel, and Jonnu Smith. Ryan, you were 1-3 last week. You are 5-10-1 overall. You have Teddy Bridgewater, Joshua Kelly, Golden Tate, and Rob Gronkowski on Thursday night against the Bears. Josh, goose egg last week. 0-4. Terrible week. He's 4-12 on the season. You have Justin Herbert in New Orleans, Chase Edmonds in New York against the Jets, Greg Ward in Pittsburgh, and Ian Thomas in Atlanta against Ian Thomas in Atlanta against Atlanta. That was redundant. I'm an idiot. And then myself boasting the best record of the week here. Whoa. I was 3-1 last week, 9-7 overall. I have Daniel Jones in Dallas this week. I was teetering back and forth on whether to put him as a downside or an upside. He may get sacked 15 times.
Yeah, that's the fun of Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Todd Gurley against Carolina. Damiere Byrd against Denver.
Wow.
That's going to bite me in the ass. I know it is. I know it's going to bite me in the ass. But I have my reasoning. And then Eric Ebron against the Philadelphia Eagles, who we will also hear about a little later when it comes to Ryan's Stream of the Week. And we'll start here with Eric. You have 2 Tennessee Titans here on your upsides. Currently, the game is still scheduled to be played as planned. So we're just going to go off the fact that this game will be played. Are you not worried at all that either Derrick Henry or Jonnu Smith, they haven't been in the team facilities, they haven't been able to practice as a team? Does that not worry you at all going into this game against Buffalo?
Not really. Well, there's a couple things going with it. I think that had everyone be healthy for Tennessee, this would have been the game plan. It would have been Jonnu Smith, it would have been Derrick Henry. Like the Corey Davis news just broke, and like I had that marked down the other day. Buffalo was their defense was amazing last year. This year they actually, I don't know if it's like they're playing like a prevent defense when they get so far ahead of the games, but for whatever reason, they're actually giving up a fair number of yards to tight ends and running backs. So it's actually a pretty good matchup for both of them. Derrick Henry, they're going to feed him the ball. He's going to get 20-plus carries. You know what's going to happen. And I think he was like outside the top 12 running backs. I think Miles Sanders, speaking of which, I think Miles Sanders is actually ahead of him in the rankings, which is kind of crazy to me. So, yeah, I definitely like Derrick Henry. And Jonnu Smith, he's 20 targets in 3 games. You know, they've only played 3 at this point. And he's got three TDs. And, you know, when it comes to Buffalo, Gesicki rolled them. He had like 113 yards against them. And tight ends have been targeted 39 times in the 4 games against Buffalo. So it's just kind of what the defense gives up. So I like both those guys. And now I don't know what else the Tennessee offense is going to do. So those guys are going to get fed.
I love the reasoning behind that because I'm a little weary with the Titans just because they haven't been able to practice. But, I mean, looking at it, if their top 3 receivers are out, it's going to be the Derrick Henry and Jonnu Smith show. And I see Josh just answered the YouTube question, but Darrell Henderson or Jarvis Landry in the flex. Henderson going across the country, playing the Washington football team, who we know has a great front 7. And then Jarvis Landry playing against the number 1 defense currently in the NFL in the Indianapolis Colts. Eric, I'll go right back to you here. What are you thinking when it comes between these two?
Offhand, I'm leaning Landry, but it's really close. I wouldn't blame anybody if they went Henderson. So no isn't a lot of help, but I think it's almost one of those like upside versus floor type things. If you just need a floor, probably Landry's the guy. He's going to get a few targets and a few receptions. If you're looking for upside, Henderson.
Ryan?
Notorious Browns pass catchers hater here. I think Odell Beckham does have a huge week this week, and I guess that could easily swing to Landry. So if I have to choose between these two, I guess I'd go Landry.
I hate both of their matchups. I will take Jarvis Landry in this instance just because higher touchdown upside, maybe. He could throw a touchdown to Odell again. Who knows?
Yeah, I think at this point it's flip a coin. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of like Eric said, I think Henderson represents more upside,
Correct.
but it's just such a muddled backfield. Like Malcolm Brown has outsnapped Henderson the last 2 weeks. They were even in week 3. Brown was on the field more in week 4, but Brown is seeing more targets. Henderson has a higher yards per catch. It's like, who's going to float to the top? Is Akers back this week? That clouds it even more. So
I'm going to be an ass and go back to something Joe said. Let's go with neither and go sign Tim Patrick because that's who you want starting in your flex right now.
That guy, yes. No, realistically, right? I put in a waiver claim in every league that I think I could drop someone and pick up Tim Patrick, and I got him. I am shocked at how available he still is.
Yeah,
and
he still is. It's ridiculous. I'm actually
yeah.
going to look it up while we talk. So
Joe, it's only 1 week. You never overreact to 1 week. Yeah, but he is the wide receiver 1 in Denver right now. And Stephon Gilmore, who was going to lock his ass up, is now on the COVID list. Look, J.C. Jackson and Jonathan Jones are still very good defensive backs. They are not Stephon Gilmore.
88% available.
Sign me up. Hello. Yeah, I would pick up Tim Patrick, but if you had to pick, I would just go Jarvis Landry, honestly. And then from that same game, Gabe Yanez, I apologize if I pronounced that name wrong, he asked over on YouTube, who wins, Browns or the Colts, and who's the top performer? So the Colts, interestingly enough, won their first road game in roughly a year in Chicago last week. Do they repeat it again going to Cleveland? And who do we think comes out as the top performer in that game? I will start. It's a tie. Look, I can't.
Wait, you actually think they're going to tie?
Okay, how about this? It's overtime, and the Colts win off a Blankenship like 45-yard field goal. And I'm not gonna lie to you, Rodrigo Blankenship will be the top fantasy performer in this game. I hate this game fantasy-wise. I think Blankenship legitimately has the chance to be the highest scoring fantasy player in this game. Josh.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong with that instance, but I'll take Kareem Hunt, and I think the game will be close. These actually are two pretty good defenses. But I'll take the Browns in a close game because at the end of the day, I trust Mayfield right now more than I do Phillip Rivers.
Fair. Eric?
Yeah, that's pretty sick, but I agree with that. Phillip Rivers, even looking at him against Chicago, it's weird because he's not mobile, but he doesn't know that yet. It was kind of weird, like watching him in the pocket and trying to run away from the defense. It's like, no, you can't do that, man. You're 10 years past that. So I think I'm going Cleveland, and I agree about Kareem. I love Kareem Hunt. I loved him before the year. He's been impressive. I think he's RB7 or something like that, and that was that was with Chubb in the lineup, and I go with Kareem Hunt. So
Hunt did what he did last week. Hunt did what he did last week, over 71 yards and 2 touchdowns, didn't have a single target. That's going to change this week. He's going to see a lot more targets with the Colts defense being as stout as they are, but they're the only team in the league right now that's averaging over 200 rushing yards per game.
Wow. So no one's going to like my downside pick. Get to that in a little bit. And then Ryan, quickly.
Browns at home for fantasy purposes. Odell Beckham. The Browns figured out what they needed to do last week. They're going to keep doing it. But for real purposes, Myles Garrett is an animal, and he will be the best performer in this game.
Going IDP, I like it.
I mean, if you want to go IDP, I would argue Myles
He
Garrett.
said top performer. He didn't say fantasy.
Yeah,
This is true.
This is true. Quickly here before we move on to the downsides, Ryan, Rob Gronkowski. We saw what O.J. Howard did. I believe it was 3 catches, 50 yards, and a dunk for him against the Chargers. No O.J. Howard. I believe he's done for the season. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
So you're looking at that tight end room now goes to the 2 tall white men who are very good at blocking. Rob Gronkowski and Cameron Brate.
Rob Gronkowski finds himself in a situation he's not been in a while. He's the most healthy wide receiver on his team.
Weird.
Godwin's out. Shady's out. Justin Watson, who was filling in for Godwin, is out. O.J. Howard's out. Fournette's probably out. Evans and Scotty Miller are both questionable, both coming into this game banged up. Gronk is still catching 65% of the passes that are being thrown his way, 9 yards per reception. Those are great numbers. He just needs a big volume game, and I think this is going to be it.
I can't disagree in that instance. I also believe that this is a tight end game if it's going to be any, just because of the names you just listed right there.
Gronk versus Jimmy Graham. This is what we were all waiting for 5 years ago.
Jimmy Graham. God, I hate Jimmy Graham so much. The fact that he's had viable fantasy games this year makes me even that much more pissed. And quickly, I'll touch on Damiere Byrd as my upside here. He had 10 targets last week, led the team. 8 catches. I believe it was 50, or it was 5 catches for 80 yards or 8 catches for 50 yards, one of the two. It very clearly showed that Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham want to target Damiere Byrd. Harry wasn't getting open. Julian Edelman looked like a 7th-round quarterback pick out of Kent State is exactly what Julian Edelman looked like on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City
He's
Chiefs.
always had a problem with drops, though, and nobody seems
Dude.
to want to acknowledge that.
No, he has, but he looked like an average wide receiver. It wasn't even the fact that he dropped passes. He looked like he didn't want to be in that football game. That's the thing that concerns me. And Damiere Byrd, hey,
if you avoid contact, you don't catch COVID. Maybe that's what it is.
That's true. Damiere Byrd has looked pretty good so far this season. He progressively has gotten more targets each week, progressively gotten more receptions, gotten more looks. I see Ryan aggressively shaking his head.
He's the wide receiver 66 on the year.
That's fine. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. Damiere Byrd wasn't being drafted, so technically he's outplaying his draft position, Ryan.
By far.
Correct me if I'm wrong, right? He's outplaying his draft position. I think he has a good, solid matchup this week. Jarrett Stidham probably starts at quarterback, and if not, it's going to be Brian Hoyer again. Damiere Byrd is going to see the targets. They're going to key in on N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman. The Patriots don't have a tight end, so forget about that position. And then they'll also key in on guys like Damian Harris and James White. Damiere Byrd, no one's going to pay attention to Damiere Byrd. And he's looked solid in route running. He has sure hands, and I think he has a decent chance this week to get in the end zone and potentially catch, 5 or 6 balls for 70 yards.
I'm just giving you a hard time. He's playing 90% of the snaps right now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, he's in on way more snaps than I expected him to be being a Patriots fan. And again, he looks good. I'm not going to lie, he looks like the best receiver on that team.
Yeah, I mean, him and N'Keal Harry, they're the ones that are running on the outside, and then Edelman in the slot. So
yeah, Byrd looks absolutely great, absolutely fantastic, and I think this is a potential week for him to pop off. I think he's a great cheap DFS play if you want to load up on some brand name guys and you need to get a cheaper wide receiver. He has the opportunity to have a big game, and I see Lee typing in on Periscope here. Don't forget Gunnar Olszewski. I will not, Lee. I absolutely love Gunnar Olszewski. He is amazing. But yeah, I absolutely love Gunnar Olszewski. And Gabe again comes in. He brings up the Dearness Johnson question, who I texted earlier to Ryan and Josh. Why are people spending 75% of their fab on a practice squad running back?
Because he's an able-bodied running back. That's basically it.
I'm just like, this is a good transition here, and we'll start with the downsides here, and I'll start with my running back.
Real quick, I want to answer this Chase Edmonds thing because Angie did mention it really quick. Right now, Edmonds and Drake are separated by 0.2 fantasy points. Their usage in the passing game has been tilting all the way towards Edmonds. Last week, Drake did not run a single route in the passing game. Yes, he did get hurt early in the game, but still, that's a very telling sign when you look at how many routes Drake was running over the first 3 weeks, 63 compared to Edmonds' 46. Edmonds, 11 targets, 8 receptions, Drake 5 for 5. Drake's not seeing that passing game usage, which is dragging down his overall value, and he's not scoring touchdowns. So yes, if you need a spot start this week, Edmonds is not a bad option.
All right. Eric, going into the downsides here, our guest Linda last week was 0-3-2. She decided to choose 5 players.
We warned her.
We warned her. She is the only person in show history to not get a single win off of 5 players chosen in the downside slot. So, Eric, all you got to do is get one right this week, my man, and you're golden.
Awesome. All right.
Actually, he wins no matter what because he can only go with 4.
Yeah,
right.
That's true. You have 2 Bengals, Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon on your downside. Mike Evans on Thursday night and Mike Gesicki against the San Francisco 49ers. Ryan, you are 3-1 last week and 10-6 overall. You have Jared Goff, Latavius Murray, Deontay Johnson, and Dalton Schultz. Josh, another goose egg from you last week in the downside department, but you're still 9-7 overall. Gardner Minshew in Houston, Damian Harris home against the Broncos, Hunter Renfrow in Kansas City, and Jordan Akins home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Myself, I was 1-3 last week, 4-10-2 overall. Those 2 ties were guys I picked, and then the next day got hurt in practice.
Probably wide receivers. That'd be a good bet.
Yeah, they were. Oh, yeah, I didn't preface this. My downside wide receivers get hurt. So I'm throwing it out there. I'm 3 for 4 so far. 3 of my downside receivers have gotten hurt so far this year through 4 weeks. And the other week that my downside receiver didn't get hurt, my upside receiver got hurt mid-game. So it's not good with me for receivers here. But Baker Mayfield against Indy, Kareem Hunt against Indy, Tyler Boyd in Baltimore, and Jonnu Smith against Buffalo. So I will start with the Kareem Hunt because Dearness Johnson came up. Is he a good pickup this week? The Indianapolis defense is the number 1 defense in football. I believe it's points against, turnovers, you name it. I believe Indy's number 1 in all major categories, if not top 5. Week 1, James Robinson. These is total yards. 90 total yards. He was RB34. Dalvin Cook, week 2, 71 total yards. Best running back out of this entire crop I'm about to give you. And 1 touchdown. He was RB17. Frank Gore, 62 total yards, RB42. David Montgomery, 57 total yards, RB 27. Indianapolis has not allowed a single RB1 so far this season, and they allowed one RB2 to Dalvin Cook, who is being drafted as a top 5 running back. Like, I didn't expect this from Indy. I expected the addition of DeForest Buckner to be really good for their pass rush, and it has. It definitely has, but Buckner has played a huge role in the run game as well. Indy's defense has looked really good so far through 4 weeks. Cleveland's line are not all pros. There are a lot of young guys. Kevin Zeitler's on the line, and he's a vet, but they're still young guys there, and I think these vets are going to take advantage of them, like Darius Leonard, like DeForest Buckner.
Zeitler's not in Cleveland anymore, dude.
Yeah.
Zeitler got traded to New York.
Giants. Yeah.
Sorry, had that backwards. Thank
Joel
you.
Bitonio is who you're probably talking
Thank
about.
you. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking of the trade, and I thought Zeitler came over from New York.
I think Conklin got a little banged up last week, but came back into the game. So,
okay. But
Jedrick Wills has looked really good on that line,
has.
too, their rookie tackle.
But even at that point, right, the Colts have each week started at 90 yards, 71, 62, 57. It's declined every week for running backs, every single time. They've allowed 1 touchdown on the ground or 2 running backs in general. And we know Kareem Hunt is big in the receiving game. So that's probably where a lot of his points are going to come from this week, because clearly Indy has the run game on lock. To go to the Dearness Johnson question, Dearness Johnson's not going to catch a pass. He's going to run the football. So if we're looking at just strictly running backs, Dearness Johnson's not going to get more than 15 yards this week. So I don't like Dearness Johnson this week.
Here's the thing, though, and this is what Gabe prefaced. This is a 14-man league.
Sure. It's deep.
Your wire is thin.
Very thin.
If you can find an able-bodied running back, you do it.
Sure. No, definitely. And that's a good point. And I think Johnson this week isn't a good pickup. But with Chubb being out, I don't know Cleveland's schedule off the top of my head, but I'm sure there has to be at some point a decent matchup where Kareem Hunt's going to be used and Dearness Johnson will also be used in that same role. And 2, Kareem Hunt's been questionable a couple times this year. Kareem Hunt could get hurt, and it could be Dearness Johnson's show.
That's the big thing. That's what a lot of people were asking me about Dearness Johnson today, and I said you're going to want him if Hunt gets hurt.
Yep.
Just to answer your question, their next game is Pittsburgh, so it's going to be a rough 2-week period. But then it's Cincinnati, Vegas, and a bye week.
Line it up, yeah. Those 2 weeks before the bye week, I like a lot. But yeah, if you're not in a 14-team league, please don't get Dearness Johnson. Like, he's not a good pickup this week. Chase Edmonds has to be available. I've seen him in a few of my leagues. Start a wide receiver in your flex. Like, it's just, unless you drafted Christian McCaffrey and you somehow traded for the 2nd overall pick and got Saquon Barkley there with you, then pick up Dearness Johnson. But I think there's better options over the next 2 weeks than Johnson. But if you're in a hole like a 14-team or a 16-team league, like Josh said, anyone that's walking,
you pick up anybody that's going to get a carry.
Anyone that's walking on 2 feet right now is a good pickup. So yeah, that's a good point. I'll go right up here to Eric here, and we'll start off with your downsides here. The 2 Bengals aren't really a question. Joe Mixon in Baltimore last year had 8 carries for 10 yards. I mean, it's a good downside because people are high up on him. Burrow, again, one of the best defenses in the league. He's a rookie, completely makes sense. What I am interested in here is the Mike Evans look here, because I had Evans as my downside last week, and he showed up pretty well against the Chargers. Is it because it's a short week and he's, not feeling as great, or do you just love that Chicago defense on Thursday night?
The biggest thing with Mike Evans is he's had a couple massive games, but he's had 2 games now with 2 yards. Luckily, one of those games he had 2 touchdowns. The other one, I think, he had 1 touchdown. And that's the problem with it, is that his fantasy production is coming almost solely from touchdowns. I can't remember who it was. Maybe one of you guys remember. Put out a stat about where fantasy points are coming from, and the most TD reliant person in the league so far has been Mike Evans. And I just don't think that's sustainable. And this is kind of I assumed he was going to play this week, but of course it doesn't help that he's also injured. So I just I'm a little bit worried about him. That he's just not getting a ton of targets. That offense, what they had to do last week to be able to come back in that game. He had a good game, but is the game script going to be like that again? I just don't think so. So I don't mind Mike Evans, but where he is in the rankings, I think is just too high.
Yeah, he's going to pull a good matchup against Kyle Fuller as well. the number 1 cornerback there for the Bears. Excuse me. And quickly, our friend Tommy Garrett, who will be joining us
On Friday.
For Club Dynasty, which we will announce a little later. But he says, what if you were in Scott Fishbowl 10 and lost Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, and Tevin Coleman? 'Cause that's what his life has come to. Tommy, my advice for that, hope Scott invites you to 11 because you're screwed this year. That's my advice. That's what I would give to you. Is just hope Scott gives you an invite, whether it be an invite because you're an amazing analyst or just out of pity because you got absolutely boned this year with injuries. Yeah, I just wait for next year, man. That's wow. What a rough life you live in.
We should also preface this too. Aside from that, Tommy finished second in Scott Fishbowl.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah, he did.
Absolutely fantastic.
Wow,
so,
what a fall.
It's the
from
price
heaven.
you paid, buddy. It is the price you paid.
What a fall from heaven Tommy's going to have second to like what? How many teams are there in Scott Fish?
I think it's 1,600 this year.
Wow, so John, you're going to go from 2 to 1,600. That's tough, Tommy. That has to be the biggest drop in Scott Fishbowl history. That's a tough one to swallow. No, for real, like that's just incredibly unfortunate. What happened? Like, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, I don't think he'd missed a game in his entire career, and he goes down with an injury. What are you gonna do? Can't do anything there. Couple over here from YouTube before we continue on. JAC says he's in a 10-man, and he's stacked at running backs. Unfortunately, he drafted DJ Moore in the 4th round. He's looking for a new wide receiver 1. His running backs are Zeke, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, and James Robinson. He has 2 trades. Here are the trades. James Robinson for DK Metcalf, and the second is Miles Sanders for Russell Gage for Stephon Diggs. Which one should you take? I will start James Robinson for DK Metcalf. Josh.
Yeah, I would go that one. I do like Stephon Diggs, but I'm not ready to give up on Miles Sanders yet.
Yep. Eric?
Yeah, I like the Metcalf one.
Ryan?
Agree.
And just for the record, Ryan was on the DK Metcalf doesn't scare me, start Tyler Lockett train, which is working. It's not like it's not working.
Until last week.
Yeah,
Until last week. Until last week.
But DK is my wide receiver 1 for week 5.
Yeah, so I would go, we would all take DK Metcalf in that instance. Tommy says he's glad to have us as friends because we're so comforting. Yeah, Tommy, Josh can be comforting, Ryan can be comforting. I'm just the realist. You're gonna have a tough fall this year. And Sean over on YouTube as well, he says, haven't the Bears not allowed a touchdown to wide receivers yet? Is that true?
That's true. I saw that. Yeah.
Wow. So that makes Eric's Mike Evans pick look way more enticing. Wow. I love that stat. Great pull. Good call, Sean. Great call on that one, Eric. A couple more here for our downsides. I'm looking at this because a lot of these seem pretty realistic. Latavius Murray's the second guy in the offense, but he's going against the Chargers.
Yeah, I just put don't chase points. People are going to see what he did last week. Speaking of, Chargers have not allowed a rushing touchdown to a running back this year.
Interesting. That's another interesting stat. Jared Goff, cross country. Goff, I mean, he should have absolutely torn apart the Giants defense and didn't do that.
Yeah, that whole offense looked sluggish last week.
Terrible, absolutely terrible. Like it was bad when I sat there and said there was a point that the Giants should have won that game like 5 times. Like there were ample amount of opportunities for the Giants to win that game. It's just Daniel Jones isn't a good quarterback, and that was the big issue there. Deontay Johnson, the Steelers play the Eagles this week. I guess that's kind of interesting because the Eagles' secondary is garbage. So
slot wide receivers towards the Eagles. It's going to be a juju game.
There you go.
Yeah,
good answer.
I was leaning with that too. As much as I love Deontay, and I think he'll still see some targets, he'll get some middling production, but this is a juju game.
One question over from YouTube again. YouTube is popping, and I absolutely love it. From No Name, he traded Hopkins for Gibson and Justin Jefferson. He was so high on Gibson, it hurts to let him go.
Wait, what?
So I'm confused.
Yeah, I think that's a little backwards. I think he traded Gibson and Jefferson to get Hopkins.
Oh, you won that trade hands over.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's a big sell high on Jefferson for me. Yeah, if you can get Hopkins, anytime you get the best player in the deal, that's
You
a good
win.
deal for you.
Yeah, you win, most definitely. Those Gibson and Jefferson are boomer and bust. Hopkins, week in, week out is going to get you solid.
Although I
points.
will say the switch to Kyle Allen, I think really does help Antonio Gibson a
Yep.
lot.
Probably.
He got very
definitely.
used to throwing to running backs last year.
Yeah.
And Josh, I guess because I had Damian Harris as my up because I was excited for his future, but not so excited this week. Why do you have Harris as your downside running back?
For me, it's just the Denver defense. When it comes to running backs, they've been kind of in the middle of the road. Harrison's not going to do a ton in the passing game, and I think that's really the easiest way to get through Denver. James Conner had 100 yards, but that's really been the only running back that's done anything against Denver. So, again, he got some nice run last week, 100 yards. I believe it was on 17 carries. But, yeah, I think it's going to be, people are just like, oh, my God, I'm so excited. I got to throw him on my lineup. Most people probably will because they're desperate because of all the injuries and, the COVID and the buys, et cetera. So I think it's one of those, like, if you have to start him, sure, then last week was a great audition. But I'm not rushing to start him. Like, I have him stashed in a couple of leagues where I'm pretty deep at running back, and I haven't been slaughtered yet when it comes to injuries. So I'm not looking to be like, all right, I'm going to start this guy over Miles Sanders, even a tough matchup against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think Harris has a bright future. He looked unbelievably explosive last week, and I think his upside lies with a touchdown. If he can get you a touchdown, I would put his odds at scoring this week at like 15%. New England should have an easier time getting into the red zone, but again, they're playing with a third-string quarterback in Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, they've only allowed one rushing touchdown so far this year. So,
and that's the thing is, I don't know if it's going to happen, but that's where Harris's upside lies. I still think he has a decent game on the ground. It's not going to be 100 yards. I think he has a decent game on the ground.
Yeah, I think it could end up being something like 15, 16, 17 carries for like anywhere between 60 and 70 yards.
That's exactly what I would peg him
That's
as.
kind of where I would put him.
And the biggest thing, Josh, you talked about is he has no PPR upside because he's not going to catch a pass. That is all Rex Burkhead. That is all James White. He has no pass-catching duties in that offense whatsoever. So his upside is going to lie in the touchdowns. And again, Denver only has allowed one rushing touchdown so far this year, so keep that in mind. Moving now to Ryan's, the Stream Master General, stream of the week, starting with the quarterback, none other than Teddy Two Gloves going into Atlanta.
I'm hoping this is where I avoid the kiss of death I've been putting on quarterbacks, but Teddy's looked great this year, as has Robbie Anderson. He's a completely different player in that offense, and they're using Mike Davis just like they did CMC. He's thrown for 235 plus every game this year, hit on 3 touchdowns last week, and finished as the QB4. And the Falcons are giving up the most points to fantasy quarterbacks. He's available in 70% of leagues on Yahoo and ESPN.
Quickly, before we move on here, Sean over on YouTube, pick 2.5 point PPR. Terry McLaurin against the Rams, Tyler Boyd against Baltimore, Robert Woods against the football team, or Jamison Crowder against the Arizona Cardinals. Josh, I'll start with you.
I don't think you sit Terry McLaurin. I mean, even with the quarterback change, Jamison Crowder, when he plays, seems to be pretty automatic. But I think in this case, I would still go Tyler Boyd and Terry McLaurin. We mentioned, we were talking a little bit before the show with Tyler Boyd going against Baltimore. Sure, it doesn't on paper, it doesn't look like a great matchup, but Boyd predominantly runs out of the slot. Baltimore lost their starting slot, their starting slot corner, and I believe it was week 2. So they're more vulnerable there in the slot, and Boyd seems to be Burrow's favorite target. So if they're going to throw, which I believe they will have to, that's where he's going to look, and I think you're going to see some points from Tyler Boyd this week.
Eric?
Yeah, so McLaurin's yeah, that's the easy one. Looking at the other 3, so I'm not very high on Burrow in Baltimore. That being said, he's going to throw 40-plus times and probably will be targeting the slot. So I actually think I also choose Boyd.
Ryan?
Shocker to everyone, I would sit Terry McLaurin. Crowder and Boyd are going to see so many targets. There's no way I'm benching either one of them this week. Crowder is a top 10 play for me this week. I think
even with Joe Flacco at quarterback.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who's at
Flacco.
quarterback.
You mean the elite quarterback?
Yes.
known as Joe Flacco. You mean the team?
Don't make me get Lindsay involved.
You mean the quarterback that is going to lead the New York Jets to the 2021 COVID Super Bowl? Bet money on the Jets now.
Oh my God! If that were to actually happen, talk about peak 2020.
But no, I could see starting McLaurin over Tyler Boyd, and I'm fine with that. I am not benching Jamison Crowder this week.
So, as I said earlier in the show, my downside wide receivers tend to get hurt. My downside wide receiver this week is Tyler Boyd. So I will not be playing Tyler Boyd, just because for some reason I have this weird voodoo curse over.
Sean, you probably are better off going with Crowder just because Joe's gonna curse Tyler Boyd.
Sean, I'm sorry, man. Like, I like his matchup. Like, I really do. The downside reasoning behind it is because one of my opponents has Tyler Boyd. That's the only reason I have him there.
He's purposely trying to put the kiss of death on him.
Purposely putting the kiss of death on my opponents at wide receiver for the rest of the season. But I even then I would still do Terry McLaurin and Jamison Crowder. Yeah, Jamison Crowder when he's healthy in that offense is too good. You go with Jamison Crowder. Ryan, your tight end. Eric Ebron.
Making the second appearance on the list. Hopefully it's better than the first. As much as Josh has been telling us over the last few weeks that tight ends don't seem to beat Philly, they sure seem to beat Philly.
It's the really good ones that do, man. I'm sorry, Eric Ebron is not that, and he sure as hell ain't putting up a 40 burger like George Kittle.
Wait, question. You said Tyler Higbee's not good, and he scored 3 touchdowns.
What has he done the rest of this year? He's average. He hasn't scored more than 7 points.
That's fine. That's the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's to my point. Is that you said that only good tight ends do well against Philly, but Tyler Higbee, according to you, is the Jimmy Graham of 2020. So why did Higbee score 3 touchdowns on your garbage can football team?
Because they were all in the red zone.
It's been a lot of boom games, but they've allowed 5 touchdowns, 25 receptions to tight ends. Ebron got going last week, finally scored his first touchdown, and had 12 targets over the last 2 games. Sorry. So week 3, scored his first touchdown and 12 targets over weeks 2 and week 3. He's available in 65% of leagues, Yahoo and ESPN.
So what you're telling me is, I just want to make this clear. Philadelphia is not good
at
covering tight ends.
No, they are not.
Okay, all right, fantastic.
All right, you know what, Ryan? I'm willing to put a water bet on this. Okay. I will put a water bet on this. Eric Ebron is not going to be a top 15 streaming tight end.
Can we do like
I'll put it on the dock.
Bet?
All right, put it on the dock.
Top 15? Oh, God, yeah. Okay,
top 15.
He's just going for the win.
Josh, I will send an entire truckload of Poland Spring to your house right now because top 15, Eric Ebron's going to smoke that team. And your defense, Ryan.
They've appeared on this list a ton. The Cardinals get the Jets this week. I don't think it needs much explanation, but I love to explain.
Ryan, Super Bowl winning quarterback Joe Flacco on the other side. It's not Sam Darnold anymore. It's Super Bowl winning quarterback January Joe Flacco.
Biggest thing is they gave up 12 sacks over the first 4 games of the season and 6 last week alone. The Cardinals actually put up a 0 last week, but had 11 sacks over the first 3 games. I think they're going to get after the QB. They're going to make Flacco's life hell. You're going to see sacks. You're going to see turnovers. And that's where fantasy defenses are scoring this year. You're seeing offenses put up a ton of points. It's not really affecting defenses finishing in the top 10 or even the top 5. It's sacks and turnovers, and there's plenty of those, and the Jets are going to do a lot of that.
That's something I'd actually changed in my league this year is I gave the turnovers and stuff are still the same, but I gave instead of 1 point to sack, I gave 3 to kind of give it that extra bump because at this point, every game, every team should put up 28 points. It's the NFL. You can't touch receivers. You can't hit anybody. So it's like at this point, there's going to be 400 yards every single game, and there's going to be, unless you're playing against the Jets, and there's going to be, X amount of points scored. So you got to, reward those bigger plays like the sacks and the turnovers. All right, my kicker of the week. You've all been waiting for it. The full 64 minutes everyone has been listening and watching to the show. You've waited for the kicker of the week. It's anxious, right? I have actually hit on every single one of these so far this year. I have nailed these.
It's not the most automatic thing that we have on this show.
I don't understand. I have no clue why. Like it's I don't understand. It's strange, but also Rodrigo Blankenship. Let's be honest here. This man is unreal.
I think he's like kicker 2 in fantasy right now.
Yeah, guess who called it? Guess who said sleeper kicker of the year to start the season? Rodrigo Blankenship. I know my special teams. All right, I have Dan Bailey this week against Seattle. Minnesota has seemed to get it going the last couple games on offense. They did it against the Titans, who we thought had a decent defense, but in my opinion, they're hot and cold. They're boom or bust, and that clearly showed. They did it again against Houston, who also does not have good defense. And Seattle, again, does not have a good defense. Seattle is a shell of what they used to be. So I think at this point, I don't know if Minnesota gets in the end zone a lot, but even then, they're going to be within the 35-yard line, and there's going to be ample amounts of opportunity for Dan Bailey to kick field goals. That's why I like this. I think the amount of opportunity Dan Bailey's going to get is huge. Oh, and there's no fans in CenturyLink Field on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, he's kicking in a quiet environment where he could have been kicking in an earthquake-like environment. Give me Dan Bailey. And my blurred lines pick, the Lions. What the hell? It looked so good the first two possessions, and then Detroit became Detroit. What the hell? Like, oh, so
That's why
painful.
you don't bet on shitty teams, Joe.
Josh, they ruined my Cardinals bet in week 3. I had the Cardinals -6. I'm like, oh, this is a freaking lock. And then the Cardinals caught Detroit Lions disease and forgot how to play football. And then I was like, oh, so the Lions and Cardinals switched bodies and switched team archetypes. Nope. Detroit goes back to Detroit and still sucks. It's that city. The Pistons haven't been good since Ben Wallace. The Tigers have sucked since Miguel Cabrera has gotten old. And the Red Wings have been terrible since the turn of this decade. Like, it's that city right now. Oh, God, I hate the Lions. But this week, a little more confident. Taking another underdog, but they are on the road. I am shocked that this team is the underdog. Carolina +2 in Atlanta. Yes, Atlanta's the home team. Yes, on paper, Atlanta has a better offense. No, Atlanta should not win this game. Like, to me, the +2 was something that I liked. Pro Football Focus has Atlanta at 2.5, which at that point, if Carolina only loses by 2, you still win the bet. Whereas with my thing at +2, if Carolina loses by 2, you push, which again is still not a bad thing in betting. You'd rather push than lose every single day of the week in betting. They're coming off of 2 straight wins, the Carolina Panthers are. Atlanta cannot seem to do anything right. I teased it on our Start-Sit show on Saturdays. Olamide Zaccheaus was the top receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. Like, why? Like,
I have a theory behind that.
I'd love to hear the theory.
So, with Julio Jones going out, Zaccheaus is practicing as the Julio replacement, not shifting Ridley to that role. So Ridley stays in his predominant role. Zaccheaus shifts into the Jones role. So now the first read becomes Zaccheaus. And
I like that theory.
You know, if you're guarding a 6'3" guy versus a little 5'9" midget, you're going to get open a little bit quicker. So that's just a theory that I have.
Listen, he has one of the best names in the league, Olamide Zaccheaus. And I had said too, like, Zaccheaus was kind of a sneaky start if Jones and Ridley if Ridley and Gage don't play, because those were the two guys who were really in question to play. And apparently, he would rather have Ridley and Gage on the field because Zaccheaus was 8 for 86, and he looked
crazy.
It was unbelievable. But again, Atlanta can't seem to get anything right. Their defense looks so bad. Their defense is terrible.
If they lose to Carolina, what are the odds that Dan Quinn is the second coach fired?
Listen, he should have been fired after last week.
I'm just saying. I feel like we need to go around the horn on this one.
Josh, start. Should Dan Quinn be fired if they lose?
I mean, he should have been fired a long time ago. But I think if he goes 0-5 and loses to Carolina, I think there's about a 70% chance that he gets canned.
Okay, Eric?
It's almost one of like, why would you do it? And it's kind of like, I kind of get why they're not firing Gase, because like, why would you put that burden on anybody else? Like, make him carry the cross. Just, you kind of created this, you're gonna have to deal with it for the rest of the year. It's not really good for the players, but it kind of depends, I guess, who they have in their coaching. If they want to test a coach that they think is kind of up and coming, then sure, make the move, see what they can do with it. But man, it's rough. Yeah, to have all that talent, that offensive talent, and not do anything with it in so long is so rough. And he's supposed to be a defensive coach. It's kind of a joke.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with Gase. He's supposed to be some brilliant offensive mind and hasn't finished above 30th in total points.
That's great offensive mind. So,
Established run with Frank Gore. What could go wrong?
Listen.
Hey, he's supposed to get Bell back this week, right? Maybe they can make it to 29th in total yards.
Oh,
There we
yeah.
go.
Ryan, you think Dan Quinn should be fired if they lose?
I
this
do
game?
think Gase should be fired immediately.
Yeah, immediately.
But
That's a fact.
Never should have been hired in the first place.
I'm actually with Eric on this, but for the exact same reasons he was saying, they've already played this game with Dirk Cutter. They're not giving the team to him. Raheem Morris, how could you fire Quinn and then give the team to the defensive coordinator that's allowed these travesties? There's nobody there who deserves the team unless you really love one of your like low down assistant coaches and you plan on promoting them. I don't see the reason in making this fire. It's the coordinator's fault just as much as it's Dan Quinn's fault.
Fire him. You should have fired him after you lost to Dallas. You should have fired him after you lost to Chicago. It could even be the fact, right? The coordinators, if they get promoted, it's still going to be the same bad crap. Players may get a freaking boost if their coach gets fired. Like, it may be the reason.
Morale. I mean, just look at Deshaun Watson's comments when they were asking him about Bill O'Brien. He was talking about, I'm looking toward, putting my head together with Tim. It was Tim White, I think is his name, the offensive coordinator, or something along those lines.
It gives players a boost. Like, no one in that locker room like Bill O'Brien. I don't know what the situation is in Atlanta, but if you're sitting there and saying more than half of your players don't like Dan Quinn, get rid of him. It's going to give him a boost at least, right? And look, you're going to fire Dan Quinn after the season, and if you run with him right now, you know what you're going to get. You have no clue what you're going to get if you promote a lower-level assistant coach or what you're going to get if you promote Dirk Cutter. You have no idea what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get with Quinn. You have no clue what you're going to get with the other guys. So, unless you're tanking for Trevor, because Matt Ryan's contract's up next year.
God, he looked so bad on Monday.
Yeah, he looked terrible.
That one looked like Phillip Rivers. I was like, you're not that old yet, Ryan. What's going on here, man?
Yeah, and there was a lot of rumors that like Matt Ryan's contract's up, and there's rumors around Boston saying that Bill Belichick would want to pick him up at free agency, and I'm like, I will stop being a Patriots fan if Matt Ryan's our quarterback. Like, are you kidding me? Matt Ryan at the quarterback? I get he played for Boston College back in the day, but let's pump the brakes. We don't need him back in Massachusetts anytime soon. Yeah, no thank you on the Matt Ryan front. But back to the game. This is essentially saying, for those that are new to sports betting or gambling in general in football, the home team gets a 3-point bump every single time. 3-point bump every single time. Which means if a team is -3 at home, they're saying if it is a neutral site game, it's a pick 'em. They're not picking anybody because the teams are so close. If this was a neutral site game, Carolina's favored by 1 point. That's what this line is saying right now, is that Carolina's favored by 1 point if there's neutral site. And remember, it is a neutral site game. There's no fans.
Yeah. That's
right?
actually a really good point.
Right? That's a big reasoning behind this, is there's no fans in that stadium. It's a dome stadium, so it already gets loud if there's fans in there. Falcons fans are diehard fans. They have seen the worst of it in the brunt of bad football over the last 5 years, and they still come out and support their team. So them having no fans and Carolina going in there on a hot streak, in Atlanta literally looking like a bottom, lower-level SEC team that couldn't beat Vanderbilt on a good day. Like, that's what their team looks like right now. I love Carolina. I absolutely love Carolina this week. Like, I like Carolina +2. I like them to win the game. Like, bet them money line. They're plus money on the money line right now. I love them to win the game. I don't know what their team over is, too. I love their team over. I love if Joey Sly is going to score 7.5 points. Bet the over. Like, any single... How many receiving yards is Robbie Anderson going to have this week? 360. Bet the over on his receiving yards. everything is coming up Carolina this week. Just seriously, man, like I wasn't confident in Green Bay to cover -7 last week on Monday Night Football. I thought Atlanta was going to give them a good football game because I wasn't too confident in Green Bay's defense. Jaheir Alexander shut down Calvin Ridley, which is great. But still, there's plenty of other weapons on that Falcons offense, and the Falcons should still play well.
Yep.
They didn't play well. So now I'm going into this and I'm saying, how much better is Carolina, or how much better is the Packers defense than Carolina's defense? I don't really know how much better it is. So I sit there and say, again, neutral site game, Carolina's favored by 1 point. Give me Carolina +2 this week. I'm love that one a lot. So with that, that's everything. And we hit on the 75-minute mark. I'm very, very proud of us here today. We did a very good job, boys. Eric, thank you for stopping by. This was a lot of fun, buddy. We appreciate you.
No, thanks for having me, and sorry about the buzzing. That was my daughter loves to put the buzzer onto the dryer, and it would keep it off, but she gets me every once in a while with that one. So
the first time I almost jumped out of my seat. I was like, "What in the hell is that?"
I figured it was what Joe yells at me about when I keep my phone on my desk and it's like right next to the microphone and it vibrates and it's like.
The scary thing is, it's like a way. I'm not even particularly close to it. It is so loud and so obnoxious. And I can't tell you how many times I've yelled at putting that buzzer on. And it's just like really got me again with it.
That's awesome.
The robot needs you to know that your laundry's done.
Exactly.
It's just trying to. It's how they communicate.
Wakes up the dead with that.
Right.
But yeah, for those that don't know, I'm sitting here 5 minutes before the show, and Josh is in here with me. We're talking before the show. I'm sitting here eating my Halloween cookie because I'm a little hungry before our show. And Josh's phone it feels like it is inside my body when it vibrated. I sit there and I jump out of my chair, and he lets it happen twice. This a-hole lets it happen twice. What a meanie. In his New York Yankees hat. So quickly before
tied up 1-1 right now. So
yeah, I know. You can find Eric at ff_Gouge, which is Gouge for those listening to the podcast. Way better than gouge. Call it Gouge because it's 1,000 times better. Navy term for those that weren't able to catch the beginning of the show here on the live stream. You can also find his work as well. He is a writer for the Fantasy Footballers as well as Ryan, so you can find their work on there as well. Our Start Sit Different Day show is 11 a.m. Eastern. As always, we'll have the lovely Faith Enos joining us as well as our host, unless she is busy, but we'll see. She normally pops in to give a little quick hello. That's over on Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook Live. Send us your questions. We'll answer them live on air just like we did here today on the live recording. And this Friday premieres Club Dynasty. Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It is a monthly show. We're going to do this about every 4 weeks. It's going to be after week 4, week 8, week 12, week 16. It's going to be a Dynasty-focused show, so we're going to focus on all things Dynasty. And our first guest is the one, the only, the guy who will finish 16th, 100th in the Scott Fishbowl 10 this year, Tommy Garrett of Pro Football Network. To preface, Scott Fish is not a Dynasty league. Tommy got screwed with injuries. Tommy is a fantastic guest. This will be his 4th or 5th time joining
He's
us
been on
here
so many times we've lost count.
on
Love
the
that
show.
dude.
Big friend of the show, Tommy Garrett, going to join us from Pro Football Network. Next week, we are excited for our guest next week. We have Samantha Previte or Previte. I'm not sure. Ryan, correct? I don't know if you know.
I'll get an answer before next week.
Samantha Previte is what we're going with, and I apologize, Sam, if we're saying that wrong, but she's a writer for the New York Post and a TikTok superstar. So we get to have a TikToker on.
Is that TikToker?
Josh and Ryan don't know what TikTok are because they're old. But
she is my guest,
I
asshole.
was about to say, like, Ryan knows plenty about that, apparently.
Ryan's an avid TikToker. You can follow him at Wheezy Wees the Mustache Man over on TikTok.
Yeah, go look for that.
Yeah, go look for that. Don't Google it, though. You might get some weird stuff.
Yeah.
For Joshua Hudson at the One Hudsonian, Eric Ludwig at ff_Gouge, Ryan Weiss at the Fantasy 5. I am Joe Zolo at Joe_Zolo. I hate English. You can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. If you missed it, Faith Enos, her newest show, The Speakeasy, a Women of Fantasy Football Encore, just dropped.
Fantastic.
It is fantastic with Allison Ederer of the Women's Sports Foundation, where if you joined us for our Women of Fantasy Football shows back in August, you know all of those donations that you guys gave for those awesome prizes or just donations in general, all of that money went directly towards the Women's Sports Foundation. We raised $1,500 for them. So absolutely love that. You can check out their gala as well, which I believe is live right now on Yahoo Sports if you want to go check that out
Next
as
week.
well. Oh, next week. I'm sorry, next week. Thank you, Josh. But always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football. We will see you next week with Samantha Previte of the New York Post and avid TikTok superstar.